what would you tell somebody who's new to training? What would be your one piece of advice to them?
Define new.
I would say somebody who they've been in the gym, but they're now just discovering squat, bench, deadlift, and they're wanting to get those numbers to go up.
They decide they want to be strong.
Yeah.
Right?
They want to get strong. They may have trained before, but they maybe not have trained with a powerlifting crew or a weightlifting crew or something like that.
The advice that I would have is pretty much the same advice I give to all coaches is
Welcome to Barbell Shrugged. I'm Mike Bledsoe. I'm sitting here with Doug Larson, Chris Moore. We have traveled up to Columbus, Ohio.
Oh, London, Ohio.
Oh, we're actually in London,
right
Ohio.
now.
Yeah, we
yes.
traveled to Columbus, Ohio. That's London's nearby for the Arnold Classic, and we decided to swing over to Elite Fitness to hang out with Dave Tate. And Dave has been a powerlifter for a very long time. Trained at Westside for a long time. Started Elite Fitness. Started EliteFTS.com. It's a fantastic website that has a lot of awesome resources. I think Doug, Chris, and I all have been on that site many a times getting our learn on. So when Dave said he would sit down with us and talk, we were pretty thrilled. But before we go any further, make sure you go over to barbellshrug.com, sign up for the newsletter. Also, go over to iTunes, give us 5 stars, and leave a positive comment.
Only positive comments.
Or stop listening.
We will delete all your negative troll comments. If we had the power to, we would.
Dave, how long have you been in the powerlifting game?
Oh, man. I did my first powerlifting competition in 1983. I did my last one in 2005. So a long time.
Jeez.
A long time.
Yeah.
So I started as a teenager. I did my first meet when I was 13 years old.
Wow. Okay. What got you in?
Trouble.
Yeah.
I was fortunate enough that my father, that's a good question. I mean, I don't really know how to answer it because it's what got you into lifting weights is a little bit different than what got me into powerlifting. But, you know, getting into trouble and stuff like that, my dad was looking. I had the cement block weight sets, you know, that most people would have.
We started there.
Yeah, I had that for maybe 3 months.
Yeah.
As I trained with that, my dad saw that I was training hard and that I liked it. And then there was a barbell club in town, Findlay Barbell Club.
Was that here in Columbus area?
No, that was it's in Findlay, which is right outside of Toledo.
Okay.
And there were a group of powerlifters that were in there that was a private club, kind of like, you know, Westside and other powerlifting clubs. That's where I was. So I had maybe four months of training, and then I was cast right into a powerlifting environment with people showing me how to squat, bench, deadlift, and
trial by fire.
Yeah,
a lot to learn really quickly.
Well, you're really fortunate. Most people, I mean, like myself, I spent years toiling in the gym with no direction.
Yeah.
Like
I never squatted without somebody showing me how to squat properly.
That's awesome.
You know, and the same with the bench and the deadlift. So that's what got me into the sport. I didn't even know it existed. I was wrestling, playing football, and so forth, but powerlifting was by far my most favorite sport. So I would go to football practice and then come back and train with those guys. And then before I graduated from high school, I didn't have to do any conditioning and work with high school. It was all done with the guys I was training with, who took me under their wing. I mean, I'm a snot-nosed 13-year-old kid.
Yeah.
And, you know, these 30-year-old powerlifters taking me under their wing, showing me how to compete, you know, and powerlift, and taking the time. And that's a lot of the reason why I do what I do now, is because these guys didn't have to do that. They didn't have to bring me into a private key club gym. I mean, who brings a 13-year-old kid into a private key club gym? Yeah. You know, and they did, you know, so because of them, I mean, that was the start of people helping me out without asking anything in return, which is why I continue to keep trying to do what I do today, because that process continued all through my powerlifting career, up until Louis and beyond, with people taking the time to help out and show.
That lesson shows and everything Elite Fitness has always done.
Yeah.
I think it's been a education giving first, and then, sell and offer things second. Like the education, and because, I was 19 years old, left high school, got into playing college football, and the first thing I found before I got into sports science or anything, I think I found it first through deepsquatter.com, a bunch of old articles. Louis, I read Powerlifting read your stuff. This was back in, 98, 99, 2000. One of the coolest things I ever bought was the old, I can't remember what it was called, Dave. You guys sold it was a purple case full of 15 VHS tapes, like the Westside seminar series. I saved up like $200 and bought that thing, and for a year had my mind blown by the quality and all the information you put in there. It was like you for 12 hours with slide decks and everything. It was really one of the things that got me to pursue powerlifting and the sports science. It's led me here for sure. Yes. Is that based on that one product and that one website?
Yeah, we've always said that we're an education company that puts out great quality product. The highest quality strength training equipment you can get. But the education in all of our messaging is always before outfitting. That's been that way on purpose from the very beginning. Yeah. So we try to put out the highest quality education we can, but when it comes to the products that we put out on the market, that has to match the highest quality education that we put out. Otherwise, it's not it's not a perfect fit.
Yeah.
You can't put out great education and crappy product, or vice versa.
Yeah.
You have to keep the messaging the same. Mm-hmm. And that's what Elite FTS has done ever since I founded it in '98.
Speaking of equipment, this is like a powerlifter's dream gym.
Oh yeah, it is.
It seems like there's a lot of variety in here. There's all kinds of monoliths and squat racks and whatnot, but it seems like no individual piece is the exact same. Everything seems unique here.
They're all prototypes.
Okay.
Right, some of them, you laugh. Is that like some of them are like, oh, we never brought those to production?
Well, there's a few things in here that we never brought to production. I laugh because most of the things in here, there's something fucked up with every piece in it.
That's where the charm comes from.
Yeah, you have the concept, then you put it out, then it comes to you when it's pretty much finalized, and then that gives me the opportunity. Usually we'll sit on a piece for about 6 months before we'll put it out on market.
Yeah.
That way I can have our athletes in at least once or twice, then we can have the weekend crew training on it for a while, and then we can find the little intricacies that we need to change to be able to make it.
Yeah, so you put a lot of weight on every one of these devices.
And you guys have a training team that trains throughout the week, or is it just a weekend crew comes
I have my staff trains throughout the week, then I have a weekend crew that comes out here, and then a lot of our athletes will come out, and then on maybe a quarterly basis we'll bring out a whole group of our athletes, and that's, there's multiple reasons for that. We can get interviews, we can get images that we need for the site and articles, and we can also get them to get to know each other a little bit better, and they can try to break the shit out of the equipment, which is
it's a win-win on all sides.
Yeah, because I don't want to make anything that a 1,000-pound squatter can't use. I have no desire to make something that's only made for a 400-pound squatter and down. I have no desire for that.
Yeah,
so it's for the best and down. I figure that way it covers everybody. You cover that, you cover it all. I just the lower end crap. I wasn't brought up like that. I don't care. Other people can take care of that market. That's not what I want to do. The universities and the colleges, that's what they're going to want as well. So they sit in here. I can go through them, each item, and say, here's this fucked up, here's this fucked up, here's this fucked up. But that's kind of how it happens. Now I'm running out of space. When we first came into here, it was like wide open. I think it's when AJ first came out to them, we were at a different location. You'd walk in and there'd be like 4 racks and like all this open floor space. And now it's like, I don't think we got room for one more thing.
Well, if you got a bigger place, Dave, wouldn't you just fill it up with more shit? It's like,
I know, yeah, we would.
You would grow into that space.
Oh, most definitely. I know I would, because I've done it 3 or 4 times. And I still say right now, if somebody said, hey, we're going to send this to you, or do you need to test this? Do you have room? Yeah.
There's plenty of room in there.
I'll
find
room.
Bring it.
I just found room for 2 more monoliths and a bench.
Don't you already have 5 leg presses? You make room for a 6th one.
We can fit it. We can fit. Ask my staff, man. They'll laugh about it all the time. I always say that. We'll fit it. We can fit it somewhere.
Say yes to the opportunities.
Yeah.
What made you Well, you have this facility. What came first? Did you ever have a gym that you were running, or did you kind of go from?
No.
You just went straight to the education online.
I was a personal trainer for a number of years, so 10 years. And
that was a hustle just to keep, the bills paid and to keep in the game of powerlifting for a while, right?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, I went to school to be a strength coach, and it didn't take me long to realize I didn't want to be a strength coach.
I mean, like a strength coach in like a college or professional teams.
Yes,
type
a strength and
environment?
conditioning coach. So after one internship, I knew that's not what I wanted to do. So
yeah, well, I think. Well, why was it? Why didn't you want to go down that path? Because I have a lot of people that send me messages that go, "Hey, I think I want to work for a sports team," and
it's got to be the right fit.
I'm not sure they know why they want to do it, and
it just wasn't me.
Yeah.
I'm a powerlifter, so I mean I got that part of me, but I'm not a rah-rah type thing guy, and I didn't really want to take on the challenge of trying to figure out how to train 80 guys at one time, and that was one constraint with it.
So you knew you couldn't train them optimally, or
yeah.
Well, that difference in powerlifting, there's 80 kids who don't really want to be there versus a bunch of hungry people who do want to be there. So culturally, it's got to be a different kind of person to manage that kind of client. Right?
It's just, and I think a lot of it too. I mean, if I was just to be brutally honest, is I never liked playing football. I really didn't. I was good at it, but I never really liked it. I was always a powerlifter, wrestler. I kind of had to trade the wrestling for the football, and I didn't want to be around it anymore. And it seemed like that's where the majority of the strength and conditioning was. I love the aspect of the strength and conditioning. I love the aspect of the strength and conditioning when it comes to the athlete, because it's a little bit more broad scope than it is with powerlifting, because you need to deal with what's going to what has transference, what's going to actually have the correspondence to what happens on the field. Where in powerlifting, it's more quantifiable. Yeah. This carries over to this. Bodybuilding is a little bit different, as well from that sector or standpoint. And I didn't want to work the number of hours these guys are working. Little did I know how many hours it was going to take doing personal training.
You don't want to break down your pay by the hour.
Oh, no, not as a trainer.
No.
So, so I did that for 8 years, maybe 9 years. And that was a 6 o'clock in the morning till 9 o'clock at night deal.
Wow. What kind of facility were you working at?
It was a high-end facility downtown. The average member income was about $250,000.
Wow.
Which is, when I took the job, is when I knew.
That was back in the early 90s?
Early 90s.
Yeah.
So when I took the job, I knew the opportunity was huge for personal training, and it wasn't being the offering that they had, the sales that they had were just dismal. So I knew to go in there and to set up a program, an effective program, that money was never going to be the objection. It was just to set up a sales process that was going to be able to give the customers what they really wanted and what they needed, and then to implement it in such a way to grow. And I was able to do that, and I got to a point where, financially there was just no way. I was not going to be able to make any more money no matter what I did. It was capped. There was nowhere to go, and at the time we didn't have this group training. The only group training we had was like aerobic classes and shit like that. So it was
I
pretty
could
much
just see
all
you like with some
with the tights,
the socks,
the steps, the step up. Give me the extra riser. I'm going to go high.
I need to make more money. It's aerobics classes. That's what's next to
Dave. I'm a powerlifter. So I'm a powerlifter. I need 5 extra risers to make sure I'm always high.
It's all jazzercise.
Yeah, exactly. But then it got to a point where I didn't. You start thinking more long term. Like, how can I have a family? How can I sustain this for the long term?
See, a lot of people don't do that part.
Yeah,
actually.
And I was fortunate to have clients that saw something more than me than I saw in myself. So we would sit down on a regular basis for a while to try to brainstorm what I wanted to do.
Were these like business owners that wanted to mentor you?
Yes.
Oh wow.
And so we discussed the option of a facility, personal training, sport training type thing, and decided against that because I was doing the seminars and helping Louis with the seminars at the time, Louis Simmons, and I really liked that part. I really liked giving back from what I learned. And
you have teacher spirit.
Yeah, and I really wanted to embrace that. as much as I possibly could, and that was limited if it was just going to be in one facility. So it became, how can we take this seminar thing and maybe use that? And then that became constrained. Well, you're only going to be able to do this, 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 and this. And it ended up being retail. That retail was going to be the driver, for the content that we would be able to put out for free. And so my big push from day one is the content always has to be free. Never are we going to charge for the content. There's not ebooks. Yeah, I mean, that's a product. That's a different type thing.
Yeah.
But the content is not. It's always going to be free. That was the only caveat that I had going into it, because I never had to pay for it, except debatable. I mean, like college education and so forth. But to give back, because people don't. They don't have the access to that type of thing. So that's what started. We started with the Q&A, and then it just kind of built up from there. So I think that kind of answers the question.
Yeah, I think people forget that if you start with just trying to give back and provide to others and create value for the people, then you can see the kind of opportunities that could come after that. Like following the initial drive just to teach and give back, and then people are then interested in what you have to say, especially if you can help them.
Yeah, and you never want to stop. You just don't want to start with that intention and then pull it back. This has got to be part of, and it's not part of everybody, but it's part of me. It's the drive that I've had since day one. It's always going to be giving back. It's always, I owe so many people for what I've been given that there's no choice. Mm-hmm. It's just what you do, and it's part of the environment, culture, and everything that we do here at Elite FTS.
And I guess if you ever lost that, you'd know it was time to go pick up something else and do something different.
I mean, if this all went to shit, I would still be writing articles. I'd still be finding a way to help people, with their training, and it would be free. I would rather, bag groceries than charge people for a fucking pay site. It's just, I can't see doing that. That's not me. I'm not saying that it's wrong by any stretch of the imagination. It's not wrong. It's just not me. And if I can't be true to me, then why in the fuck bother?
Yeah.
We got to put that on a quote pic. No, but we said there's a lot of people struggle with this a lot. We all struggle with it, still struggle with it. But young coaches, they're discovering coaching, and they're thinking, I could be a coach, I could get into CrossFit, I could get into teaching. Would you recommend that they have to first decide what is really firing them up? What could they see themselves doing for free for the rest of their life? Would that be the first clue?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many. You have to know what your own purpose is. What do you stand for? What are your values? What is your purpose? What are you here for? And that really, once you lock into that really shouldn't change. Then everything else from there that you do is to move that purpose forward, to move the needle. Maybe it will be in this industry, maybe it won't be. Maybe your best way to serve in this industry is to not be in it. It's defining what that purpose is. And that purpose, it could be a philosophy, it could be, many different things. And with coaches, as you said, one of the biggest teaching factors I put out to them is everybody wants to try to use somebody else's program. And that's fine if you're just starting out, because you really don't have a choice.
You got to learn from something.
Yes. Yeah. But if you've been doing this for 10, 15, 20 years, you have a pretty good idea what works for you and what doesn't work for you, what works for your clients, what doesn't work for your clients. You've established what your own training philosophy is. So at that point in time, you have to continue to keep learning. But you're not learning to replace your philosophy. You're learning to build on your philosophy, because the one thing nobody can ever steal is you. People can steal workout programs left and right. They do it all the time.
Yeah.
But they can't steal you. So if your training philosophy is based upon all the mistakes that you've made, and all the clients that you've made, that's unique to you. And then that's what you share, and that's what you build upon.
You're saying, you kind of threw out some years there. You've been doing this for 10, 15, 20 years. What is that timeline? I feel like a lot of times coaches actually try to go off their own programming maybe too early with a lot of clients. Maybe they should follow somebody else. Maybe they're a little too chomping at the bit to do their own thing. How long do you think it takes for someone to really be maybe mentored by somebody before they are ready to kind of make that leap into making their own mistakes.
Plus
with
or
their own
minus
clients.
2 weeks on this estimate.
Yeah, yeah.
But I mean,
that's a really good question, and it's in my mind while you're asking that, I'm thinking education experience, education experience, education experience. You need to have a solid base of education. And I know that, there's always been that debate, and that this debate's been going on since the dawn of time. What's more important, the education or the experience? Well, both. All right, because if you don't have a solid education in the exercise science or exercise discipline or training and so forth, you don't know if that person sitting across from you who may or may not be an expert is full of shit or not. You have no idea. Because what they're saying and the words that they're saying, they sound good to you, but they may be completely out of context. They may not even be what they are defined. The energy system is a great example of this, is how fucked up people make that. And you can listen to people and hear them and be like, man, that sounds good. But he has no idea what he just said. It scientifically doesn't even fit what would be in an exercise phys 101 book. Right. So the education is important. So fucking Wikipedia it if you have to, but you are correct. There's a lot of people that are jumping the gun, I think, when it comes to that. But at the same time, if you're going to use somebody else's program, you need to study what the methodology is behind the program.
The concepts.
Understand. And I know Westside and conjugate, concurrent, whatever you want to call it, extremely well. So you need to understand what the variables are and how this was put together and why it was put together, why the parameters change for this group compared to this group, and understand that. That way, that program, while you're using it, you're learning from it, not just from the results and what you're doing with the day-to-day, but with why was it put together? Why did Louis decide this instead of this? Then you study that aspect, and then while you're doing that, you're becoming educated, and your philosophy starting to be developed.
I like to do other people's programs a lot of times, just do like a cycle of what they're doing, just to see. It's like, oh, I see what they did there. It's like if you understand, like what you're talking about, if you have the education, you understand the underlying principles of physiology, biomechanics, whatever, and you're doing a program, and the next thing you know, you see that they supersetted this with this, and you're like, oh, that's actually kind of brilliant. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes you need to get in and actually do some of the things to really get a handle.
Yeah, you have to, and that's why I like to actually do other people's programs versus just read them. That's totally different.
Yeah, sometimes you can explain things on paper, but you're doing it just to get somebody to experience what it's like, and then you would say, if you're coaching live, aha, see? That's why I would say it like that. It's something you have to feel sometimes as well. Right?
There's other things too, and it's I have John Meadows writes my programs now, so I don't even have to think about it. Sometimes you'll see things on paper, you'll be like, oh, that ain't too bad.
Yeah.
Oh, shit.
I've definitely had that happen.
AJ's laughing. It's happening to him. It's time
oh, hell yeah. You get 2 exercises into it.
AJ
like,
tried CrossFit. He's like, this shit looks easy.
Yeah, it looks easy. On paper, this shit is a kick.
Fucking 95 pounds, bro.
Yeah, it ain't nothing.
Yeah, nothing.
You get halfway through it, you're like, oh, my God, I'm seeing stars. I'm laying on the floor. So there's some merit into trying it, and that's an advantage that a coach has who isn't really training for anything, because you can't play around. I mean, that should be a coach's job, is to experiment and to play around. You don't want to do that shit with the athletes you're working with.
Don't experiment. I mean, I think experiment maybe to maybe 5%, right?
Maybe more. I mean, the coach's job is
but experiment a lot on themselves.
Yes.
A little on the
clients. Yes, because the clients, your job is to go from here to here. You have to do whatever.
Kind of how I like to approach it is like 90% of what I'm doing, I know works without a doubt.
Yes.
10%, theory.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know what you need? You need your population like 3 million fit, young, 18-year-old Chinese gentlemen with barbells. You just fucking make them all max out every day, and then the 10 who survive make you look like a goddamn genius.
There you go.
That's one strategy.
Let's take a break, and when we come back, I'd like to find out the mistakes you've made over the years.
Okay.
And how other people might be able to learn from that.
Okay.
All right, welcome back to Technique Wall. I didn't say hi to Chris Moore. There's the man. All right, my name's Doug Larson with the Barbell Shrugged podcast. We are doing video number 3 today of the squat series. We did video number 1 on a big overview video of air squats, goblet squats, and just teaching the basics of squatting, which basically means heels on the ground, tight back, knees out. And then video number 2, we did front squats. And then, like I said, today is video number 3. We're going over back squats. You need some camera time. You're done. All right, so like I said, today we're going over back squats. All the basics, excuse me, were covered in the overview video, but we're going to run through those really quick right now. So if you're a CrossFitter or you're a weightlifter, for the most part, you're going to be doing a high bar back squat. And so those three basics look like this. Basic number one was keeping my heels on the ground. So if I do a high bar back squat, my heels stay down the whole time, okay? And then also, one of those points was keeping a neutral spine. You can see that I don't hyperextend. My back stays nice and straight at the bottom, and I'm not round at the bottom like this. I'm not butt winking and then getting my posture back. Nice straight back the whole time, just like that. And then finally, point number three of the basics was that I always want to have my knees out over my toes. So my knees are going to be out right over my feet, up like this, and I never want to let them dive towards each other like that. I don't want to get that funny knee wobbling while I'm squatting. Okay? So those are the basics, no matter what type of squatting you're doing. Neutral spine, heels down, keeping your knees out over your toes. For today, we're going to cover two different variations of squatting. There are many different variations of squatting, but today we're going to focus on kind of the big two. The big two, for now, we're going to say are high bar squats and low bar back squats. So if you come in a little closer and you look at where I'm going to put my grip, there's a knurling, and then there's also little hash marks, and that basically tells you if you're centered on the bar. So what I typically do is I go about a thumb's length outside of that smooth part, or maybe I go an inch or so inside of the hash mark, depending on what I'm doing exactly. So I'll start here for the moment, and then now I know I'm centered because I'm equidistant from these little hash marks. Then I'm going to step under with both feet, and I'm going to put the bar right in the middle of my upper traps. Okay? This is a high bar position. I'm going to stand all the way up. I'm going to take one step back, and I basically don't need to step back any further than that. Okay? So from here, all the same rules apply. I'm going to look straight ahead. I'm going to have a nice braced, tight core where I'm not loose and hyperextending, and I'm not rounding over at all. Okay? Butt back a little bit, and then I'm just going to sink down. Butt back a little bit. I'm going to sink down right in between my feet and to come right back up. So I'm staying nice and tall. I'm sitting down as low as I can with my heels down, my knees wide, and good posture. And then I come right back up. For a high bar back squat, unless you have amazing leverage, which basically means that you have a nice long torso and short legs, short limbs, you're probably not going to be able to stay perfectly vertical like this the whole time. You're going to have to bend over a little bit, and then as you go down, your knees will probably come forward a little bit. You can see at the bottom, my knees are forward a little bit. They're not 100% vertical, but as I come back up, I drive through my heels. They come back more vertical than they were, and then once they get vertical or close to it, my hips come forward, and I complete the movement, squeeze my glutes together, and I stand nice and tall at the top. Okay? So butt back, keeping my shins vertical. As I pass parallel, my knees are starting to come forward. You know, if I have good technique, I can kind of bounce out of that bottom position. If I'm catching not back squatting, I wouldn't catch anything, but as a weightlifter, you're kind of getting used to riding that bounce a little bit. Okay, your knees are going to come forward and then come back to vertical. What I don't want to do is stay all the way vertical where my knees come forward like this, and I'm always coming up like this with my knees way too far forward. That's excessive. That's excessive, and you don't need to do it. We're not going to go too far into that right now. Just know that you need to bend over a little bit and not stay 100% vertical. Okay? The other variation that we're going to look at is a low bar back squat, which has slightly different benefits than the high bar back squat. So usually I grab a little bit wider, although you don't necessarily have to, but usually it's easier if you do. And then instead of having it right here, I'm going to bump it over the meat of my upper traps, and it's going to rest usually right below my upper traps and right between my kind of posterior delts. Okay, this isn't as low as you possibly could put it. Some people do go a little bit lower, but for me, usually I put it about right here. Okay? Especially with Olympic bars, they'll roll off your back if it's too low. From here, usually I like to widen my feet a little bit. I tend to low bar back squat right about here, butt back, knees wide, and then I usually can only go down to about there. Okay? I'm right about parallel, maybe even slightly above. Any lower than that, and I start to round. So if I'm here, again looking straight ahead, feet slightly wide, butt back, knees wide, I can only go to about here before I would have to compensate some way, whether I'm rounding my back or I'm pushing my knees forward, or my heels are coming off the ground, in order to go lower than this, I would have to make some type of a compensation. I would have to compensate in some way, and my form would break down. I'd be doing it incorrectly, and I don't want to do that. So I would stop before I go any lower than you just saw. So low bar back squats for me, parallel is about all I can do, and so I don't try to go any lower. There's barely any benefit from going lower than that, and there's a huge risk, because I'm much more likely to get injured once I start compensating. So I tend not to do that. So one more quick point about low bar squatting is, as I said before, since the bar is a little bit lower, that usually causes me to bend over a little bit more. So as opposed to a high bar squat where I'm very vertical with my torso, a low bar squat, I'm probably gonna bend over a lot more. And then in this bent over position, I'm gonna get a lot more activation and recruitment of the muscle fibers behind me, which basically means my glutes, hamstrings. It's gonna be a much more hip dominant movement. So I can kind of put the stress on my glutes and hamstrings and take it away from my quads a little bit. Granted, they'll all be doing some work, but I can bring up my glute and hamstring strength by doing a wider stance, low bar type squat, because it's more hip dominant than a weightlifting squat, which tends to be more quad dominant. Again, you can get strong everywhere doing all of them, but those little variations can help you get more hip strength, and then if you're doing a high bar squat, you can get more kind of knee extension, quad dominant type strength. Again, it depends on what you're looking for with the variation that you choose. A final point for knees out for both types of squats is one cue that tends to help people. If I am a person that every time I go down, I go like this and my knees tend to cave in like that, I can think about pushing the floor apart, okay? So I'm here and I'm trying to push my feet away from each other, and that tends to have my knees go out a little bit. That term knees out doesn't actually necessarily mean knees way out. What it does mean is that it's keeping your knees from diving in. So I'm trying to avoid this by pushing my knees out. It just gets me back to, relatively to normal. If you go a little bit beyond normal, there's totally nothing wrong with that. That's totally fine. As long as your knee is over your toe, you're not twisting your knee, and you're much less likely to hurt your knee. So think about pushing your feet apart, and that'll help recruit your glutes, glute medius, and all of your hip external rotators, and it'll keep your knees out, because if they're not firing, your knee's gonna dive in. If they do fire, they're just gonna pull your knee towards the outside. Okay? So one more reason to do hip dominant squats is to help strengthen those external rotators. It'll help push your knees out, even when you're doing the non-hip dominant variations of squatting, like the high bar back squat, which most people do when they're doing weightlifting and CrossFit. Well, that's it for video 3 of the squat series. Again, video 1 is the overview. Video 2 is the front squat. This is video 3 on the back squat. We'll have more squat videos, even though we haven't decided exactly what they're gonna be yet, coming up very soon. If you wanna see any more videos from us, from Barbell Shrugged or from Technique Wad, you can go to barbellshrugged.com. All the videos will be in the library on the site. Just click the episodes tab at the top of the page.
And we're back with Dave Tate of Elite FTS, and we're here to find out. I think the first half of the show is amazing, by the way. But we're about to find out your training mistakes you've made, the things that you could probably tell lifters and weightlifters and powerlifters and CrossFit, anyone in training that might be able to keep them from hurting themselves.
Will help them get stronger and
stay training longer. I don't know. Yeah, or now you're like shaking your head, like, he's got no advice.
No, it's like the mistakes are many. Where do you start?
And AJ was telling us you were at Westside and you.
Yeah, let's focus on there because it's. Yeah. I mean, I got 3 decades of mistakes.
I wouldn't stop by the mistakes there.
Part 3, 4, 5.
AJ was saying that a lot of the mistakes that you made specifically helped him personally, do as well as he did in powerlifting.
That's Westside. I was at Westside for 14 years, and I've known Louis since I was first competing. When I was 13, 14, 15, Louis was in the warm-up room helping me out, giving me advice. So in one form or another, I've known, Louis since my whole entire life. So when I graduated, I was actually the first person to ever move to Columbus to train at Westside.
Oh, wow.
And when I came, I knew what I was coming into. You know, not that I knew that it was going to be a brutal training environment, but I knew the history. You know, I knew what Westside represented.
What was the history then?
That he started in his garage, you know, and then at that time when I came up, he still had a commercial gym. And then as soon as I got here, I was in a sling from a mistake with a pec tear. As soon as I got here, he got rid of the commercial gym and he went back private. And so that started, you know, a whole nother phase. So it was maybe a 10, 14-year phase where in my time period that I was in there, I saw the floor press be used at Westside for the first time. I saw boards being used for the first time. Wow. I saw the monolith being used for the first time, chains being used for the first time, bands for the first time. I think I was actually the first one to use chains and bands. Me and Jim.
Louis like, I think we're going to throw some chains on. Dave, get under that bar.
Oh, I can tell you a fucking story. I'll tell you a story about the fucking bands.
I've got a story about the bands myself.
Yeah, we've all got band stories.
Oh, my God. This is a good one. We have breakfast, as we normally did, and then Louis was like, hey, we're going to run into this basketball clinic. I'm like, what the it's like squat day, man. I just had 2 barnyard busters. I'm ready to go squat.
Barnyard busters. Yeah, that's what I'm eating tomorrow morning.
Yeah, barnyard buster.
I'm eating a barnyard buster.
Excuse me, ma'am. Have 2 barnyard busters, please.
Maybe I won't do it after this story.
So we go to this basketball clinic, and you know it's Dick Hartzell's there with his bands, and I'm looking at these bands. He's like, well, what do you think? And I grab this stupid blue band and get it behind my back, and you know 2 people have to help me get it back there, and I'm like pressing it.
How old are you at this time?
What's that?
How old are you at this time?
Oh God, this was 91, so I have no freaking idea. You'd have to do. I need a calculator.
He had a lot of hair because I remember the old Westside tapes.
I still had hair. I still had hair. Fuck it, I don't know. You know, so I'm pressing. I'm thinking, what the? We're gonna. I'm like, Louis, we're gonna press bands. This is stupid. And then Dick's on the floor rolling around with his leg back behind his head and doing shit with his ankles and all this flexibility crap.
Which you have to see. YouTube this. Dick Hartzell, father of the bands and stretching.
Oh, my God. And I'm watching this, and all I'm thinking is, man, I am not getting on the floor. You know, the only time I get on the floor at Westside is for a floor press, and I'm using the rack to get up. I am not laying down and rolling around with a fucking band to stretch my hamstrings out. It's just not happening. I'm 300 pounds. I'm not made to be on a floor. You know, AJ can relate to this. You know, he was there. He knows what I'm talking about. We're not made for that shit. Even when you walk in there and you see the floor press loaded, you're like, motherfucker. You know, and you start trying to talk your way out of it.
Get off the ground 10 times there.
It's board press day. No, it's floor press. No, it's board press. Anyhow, Louis says, grab them all. So I grab them all, and I'm sitting in his trooper, and we're driving back to the gym, and I got all these bands in my lap, and I'm just thinking to myself, what are we going to do with this crap? And then we get in there, and I ask him, what are we going to do? He's like, I want to hook it up to the barbells. I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like the chains. I'm like, no, wait a minute. Well, wait a minute. You mean you're going to hook one end there and one end on the monolift, and then we're going to squat against it? It's like, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Load it up. You know, so we didn't know how to hook them up, or, I mean, we just threw them on there. So me and Joe have 4 blue bands on each side.
Oh,
well, it's not tight because it's just,
just
like really tight top, floppy.
Yeah, I mean, Louis didn't put the 4x4 and the slip knot and all the other shit that's in there now. It was just underneath the monolith.
I got you.
But we had great success, huge success with the chains. You know, both Joe and I squat went up 60 pounds. So I'm like, I'm all for this shit.
Yeah,
as soon as I stood up and I felt the bands push me down, then I start thinking, keep in mind my background is in this. You know, you got overseat eccentrics going on here. You know, this is something that you typically don't have. So we're actually making the box squat pretty much a plyometric with your ass is what it's becoming. Instead of your foot hitting the ground for the plyometric, it's now basically your ass. And you have the overseat eccentrics to be able to create that stretch reflex. So I'm thinking to myself, this is fucking genius. You know, I had no idea that it was going to end up being 900 pounds of band tension over the 6 years, you know, from there. But that's kind of how it worked. You know, something like that would come in, then we would start really on the moderate end, and then it would just get insane. You know, as far as how much band tension we were using, we just kept pushing and pushing and pushing.
To just see how much tension would.
Not tension, to see how hard he could push us until we broke.
Yeah.
And we were like, motherfucker, we'll do it.
Yeah.
And he had a group of guys, you know, the guys that I trained with, that we'd run our head through a wall, you know, to get stronger. So we did anything that we were told to do plus something.
Good athlete. And a good athlete.
Yeah, I mean, and
coachable.
Coachable.
That is coachable.
Yeah, I mean, from a genetic standpoint, we had a couple guys in there that I would say were actually genetic freaks. Everybody else were just, hardcore lifters to the bone. That got to where we did. Myself including, just by getting as close to that edge as you possibly can to where you're going to fall, and then staying there.
Right.
And that's not the most optimal environment to train in. But you get 7 people with that same mentality, and I was perhaps one of the worst, then you got Louis, and me and Louis going back and forth. So, and he'll tell you, my goal was I wanted Louis to tear something off every time we trained. That was my goal. I wanted to fuck him up and send him to the hospital.
You won at least a few of those. He tore off plenty.
I wanted. That was my goal, to send him to the fucking hospital. That was just the way it is, and vice versa. And because of that, that time period that we're there, I can look back now, and there was a speed bench video that was posted not too long ago, the crew that I trained with, and I went through and counted how many surgeries there's been. It was like 46, and there was only like 8 of us. And this was before we left the gym. This was before the guys left. This was while we were there.
Oh my God!
I mean, there was always somebody under construction.
You want to make some omelets, Dave? You got to crack a few eggs, man.
And but it was just accepted that if you're going to do this shit, you're going to get hurt. That's how we felt, and that's how we trained, and that's how what we realized. And now looking back, you see that where Louis extremely excels, and people I don't think give him credit for this, is he learned from all that. He took our blood, guts, surgeries, injuries, mistakes, and then applied it to that next generation that came through, that AJ came into. And now they're fine. They don't have anywhere near the injury rate that we had. They're not getting their hips replaced. They're not getting their shoulders replaced. They're not getting reconstructive surgery for all this and all that. We did that, so they wouldn't have to. And that's kind of how I look at Westside in general. When I look back at it, it's like this long fraternity, that I was very fortunate to be a part of, and I was a part of a growth phase, where, we may not all, there's still world records being broke, but we had the mental guys, the crazy ass people that would just do anything to try to get stronger, that now, when now it's Louis brings people in, more than he did when I was there. And it's just, it's conscious effort. He is recruiting. He'll tell you he's recruiting because he wants people to break all-time world records, and he'll flat out tell you he doesn't want to start with building somebody to an elite total. Give him the elite total. He's earned that. So in my opinion, nobody's got the right to criticize the fact that the guy is recruiting lifters because he built them for 40 fucking years.
Yeah.
So now he's able to recruit those guys, like you were talking about, all the millions of Chinese lifters. He can recruit the best of the best and then take them and create something really special. So for all of us that have been through Westside to be able to look and watch from the outside in, that's really fucking cool because we didn't have those genetic gifts and that skill set that those guys do now. Yeah. And I don't even know them. I don't even know who these guys are. But you see the lifts that they're doing and the records that you're doing, and you're like, man, I was a little part of that, because Louis was smart enough to learn from it. Most coaches don't, and that's the thing that
the coach has to be coachable.
Exactly. You have to know what you know, and you have to know what you don't know, and Louis excels at that. He knows what he doesn't know, and then he knows how to execute what he does know really fucking well, and that's what he was able to do. I lifted more than I ever thought I would be able to. There's no doubt in my mind. I thought I was tapped out at a 1950 total, which was stuck for 4 years.
AJ, you say the same thing until you made that trip to Westside?
Yeah.
Yeah. Quit or move.
And that's the position
Dave was the person that told you to move, in case that didn't get picked up on the mic.
Yeah. So there were a lot of mistakes there, but before that I made a ton of mistakes. Just as far as training, sticking with a linear model for way too long, the progressive overload for way too long, that whole Milo and the cow bullshit, that only serves for so long, Did
you ever get the cow picked up?
No. I tore my fucking knee intact, the cow kept getting bigger.
That's the trouble with it. For the first couple of years,
that
it's great.
serves you for a period of time as a
Yes,
novice.
most definitely. I mean, I
think most people that listen to this show are novice. So
yes.
These guys don't need to be jumping into something too complicated too soon either.
That's a fantastic point.
Yeah.
Because when I started, it was one basic progressive overload linear periodization with the percentages scaled back. And they were scaled back because you don't grow your strength linearly. It comes in spurts. So I was smart enough or not smart enough, but had people smart enough working with me that understood that if this guy figures out his squat and the technique locks in, his squat may jump 30 pounds, so we need to adjust the percentages because he just became 30 pounds stronger, technically. That's why I've always said weak points are either technical, mental, or physical. And most of the time it's technical. 80% of the time it's technical. And you fix that, you get stronger. That's why people will go to these seminars and you teach them how to squat, then they break PRs.
Right.
How do you take somebody that's been squatting for 10 years and then they break an all-time PR in a freaking seminar with 15 other people? Well, you show them how to do it right, and they're like, oh, boom, they got it.
They didn't taper for the seminar.
Yeah, exactly, and most definitely. So I totaled, I think 3 or 4 elites before I even knew what Louis' training was, conjugate training was.
Yeah.
And even after that, when I did get to Westside, I thought he was full of shit. Everything I read from him I thought was just horse shit.
Yeah.
I didn't go to Westside for the training because I figured that was just a lie for some other thing that they were doing.
What did it look like back then? I mean, we know what it looks like now.
It was small, man. It was maybe 600 square foot at the most.
Yeah.
It was a dump. Actually, the first one was even worse than the one on Dimmers. The first one was like this bottom of a house, and there was a hole in the floor, and there was a boxer that lived in the basement. And
wow.
I didn't know until I went in there one night, and I heard some dude downstairs. I didn't even know there's a basement. And some guy downstairs, and there's like a troll living in the basement.
Sure, I'm getting tired. You guys dropping those bars up there.
Oh, this is terrible, man. And there was the lady sold like pottery in the front end of the building. So every time he left, she'd break shit.
Let's put a crazy powerlifting gym with a pottery.
Oh, this was a shop.
It was shaved guys with goatees on this side, pottery on this side.
Yeah, it was on Sullivan Avenue, and all I remember is that was like the first. Because I trained at Matt Dimmel's gym because Louis,
the great Matt Dimmel.
Yeah, Louis split, his commercial gym. He gave half the stuff to Matt and said, go ahead and open a gym. Then he had this dump, on Sullivan. Well, I was in a sling, so I couldn't do pretty much anything that was at Westside at the time because there was just nothing there. You can't squat with one arm, I can't bench with one arm. So Matt had some of the machines, so I was training there for a few months. Then when I finally got in and walked in, and trained. I was in there to spot and watch the guys lift. I'm thinking to myself, this place sucks, man. I've always trained in private gyms. I think 6 months of my life I was in a commercial gym.
Oh, wow.
So, and I'm like, this is the worst dump I've ever been in. And they've all been dumps. But this is the worst.
But this is the dumpiest.
This is the absolute worst. Then when we moved off to the one on Dimmers, which I think was 400 square feet, that was like a godsend. Then there's black spray paint on the windows so nobody comes in.
Right.
And but that was great. That was
you guys set it up so it's really attracted the potential clients.
Yeah.
But that was so great. That's the first Westside tapes ever got. Speed benching sessions. I'm like, man, that window's just fucking painted black. It's pretty hardcore.
Oh yeah. I mean, we didn't want anybody coming in. It was just we're there to train. And then as it grew, he moved off to where he is now. And that was I spent maybe 1-2 years there, and I never really liked it there. I mean, that's my own personal opinion. I didn't like it there. When you got 12 years in another place, but he wanted to grow. He wanted to get more lifters in.
Yeah.
And it was getting a little crowded. There were a little bit too many fights going on at one time.
Yeah.
But there was also a dynamic with that closeness. Not like brotherly love or anything like that, because most of us hated each other.
It didn't sound too brotherly.
Yeah, I mean, when you were so close and you're on top of each other, and you're bumping into each other, it's like the aggression's high enough to begin with. It fueled that. Then when we went over to the other place, and it's, if somebody was doing reverse hypers at the old gym, they could easily be over there and spot a max effort lift in a second. It's like 3 steps. Then at the new place, it's like, man, you got to go all the way across the gym, so guys just quit doing it.
For powerlifters, this is a long way to walk.
Yeah, I mean, they just stayed down there. It's like, what the fuck, you know? Is anybody going to come down here and run this friggin' monolift? You know, and so there was that little, you know, kind of getting used to that whole aspect, which it worked its way out, but I don't think I was there long enough to see it really come to that.
What did the training look like then versus now?
I can't tell you how they train now. I really can't. I have no idea. But how we trained then is everything that I've ever wrote. You know, I never lied when I wrote anything. It was, you know, you had your max effort day on Monday, and it did change throughout the years. The max effort work moved more from really heavy singles to actually backing down a little bit to where some of it was triples, some of it was actually just sub-maximal work. The speed percentage dropped tremendously. My first bench workout, dynamic bench workout, I think was 75%.
Yeah, it used to be pretty heavy.
Yeah, for 8 sets of 3. And then I think before I left, it was down to 40%.
Oh, wow.
You know,
it might be lighter now, AJ.
Yeah.
35 or 40.
And I remember the first time it dropped, we had a guy named Tim Van Horn, and he tweaked his pec, so he had to bring his training down because we had 3 different benches where we benched at. So you had the over 500 benchers, the over 400 benchers, and then the slapdicks. And so
you bench under 400, you're a slapdick. Get over in the corner with the plastic weights.
Yeah, so I was in the 500 club.
I'd be in the slapdick.
Yeah, so you'd be down there. We didn't give a fuck what you did. You did whatever you wanted. So he tweaked his pec, and he, instead of using 315 and 365 like we did, he had to use 275. Well, then he ends up going to a meet, and he destroys his record by 40 pounds.
Wow.
And Louis goes, oh. Huh.
Oh, yeah. Then across the board, we're like, get that fucker off. You know, we're all using 275 now.
Yeah.
You know, and bam, bam, bam. And then everybody's benches started going up.
But it's funny that insight starts with a tweak or injury or presumably a bad thing. But really all that is a data source that you can use to get a feel in real time how things are going. It's just one clue that something's not working for that person.
I've never learned anything from anything that I've done that's been successful. The greatest things that I've ever learned and anything that I've ever learned moving forward, albeit business, life, or training, has always been through adversity. You know, through adversity comes prosperity. You know, without prosperity or without adversity, you're just mediocre. Mm-hmm. You know, so it's mediocrity. So if you avoid adversity, you're going to leave a life of mediocrity. You're just going to be nothing. You know, so you have to embrace that. You have to take that, you know, that risk. And if it's in training, that risk is in the training, but it's also in the guidance of the training. You know, what we needed back then was somebody to be able to say, okay, dial it back. All right. And I'm not even sure that would have worked, you know, because Louis may have tried to dial us back, but he was just as insane as what we were. So, you know, it didn't work.
Well, you mentioned one more. The great Chuck Vogelpohl, I guess he didn't help you dial back anything. He was in the mix too. The guy Louis told me one time, oh, he's great. If you want, one, he warned me not to squat with him, but two, he said, don't let him.
And you did anyway, right?
I did. I paid for that one. They made me say, don't let him touch you. Don't let him put his hands on you was his tip to me before training. He's like, don't let him. I was like, what? Don't let him touch me? He's like, yeah, that'd be ill-advised. He's an intense guy.
Yeah, I mean, Chuck's known for being really intense, but he's probably one of the most humble person that I've ever met in life. And the one thing I always throw out there is what people never realize from those videos is they never saw that Chuck was usually the first person in the gym getting everything ready. And they never saw that he was usually the last person to leave putting everybody else's shit away. And that's just who he was. That's how he always was. So there's a lot of things that I wish were in those videos that really weren't. I mean, there's a lot of really cool shit. You know, the guy misses a weight and then that just crumples him. And then 3 minutes later, he comes back and hammers it.
Yeah, so he may have added weight to the board.
Which videos were those?
These are all of Louis' old, like on his website, you could probably find out, but the Westside series too. Dave has them on Elite FTS. Man, if you can get some of them on YouTube.
You have those available?
No, we DVDs don't sell for shit
remember, I was buying these.
It's probably
you can find them on eBay or YouTube. There's a few
eBay.
of them. Yeah,
or Amazon maybe.
Louis Simmons seminar series.
DVDs. There may be some
There's
clips.
some. And if you're creative on eBay, you can find them. Great, awesome. And you see I remember Dave and the guys fucking with you because you're doing Suspended Good Mornings with tight jeans on. I remember all that shit. Like, cheater Dave, get your ass back in the power act. Cheating.
I mean, we always train in whatever we want to work in, man. I mean, there's no sense to change for working out. You can put on your training clothes. Are you fucking kidding me?
I don't know, but what all this points out to me is that, like, when you go to a big gym like this, you get a feel for, like, oh, yeah, I get why this place kicks ass. There's a feeling. There's shit you can't put down into an ebook when you go to a place like Westside. And it's what you're missing if you read about it online. You go, cool, AJ squatted 1,200 doing this shit. I'll do that. And then I'll take what Rich Froning does because I want those abs. And then I'll do what this guy's doing for nutrition. I'll combine it all into – well, you're missing all this, like this rich data and this story.
Oh, yeah.
You got to know all that before you're going to try to do – speed squats with blue and green bands over a bar. You're going to get hurt. You don't know the story.
Dave, before we wrap this up, one last question. What would you tell somebody who's new to training? What would be your one piece of advice to them?
Define new. How many, because that can be a lot of things. That can be the guy that's never worked out before in his entire life. It can be the guy who's been in the gym screwing around for a few years and just gets serious.
I would say somebody who, I guess, the latter. Yeah. They've been in the gym, but they're now just discovering squat, bench, deadlift, and they're wanting to get those numbers to go up.
They decide they want to be strong.
Yeah.
Right?
They want to get strong. They may have trained before, but they maybe not have trained with a powerlifting crew or a weightlifting crew or something like that.
The advice that I would have is pretty much the same advice I give to all coaches is, to execute what you know. That's the first thing. So if all you know how to do is a body weight squat and push up, then do them right. Do them the best that you possibly can. Learn the progressions from those. If you got to teach it to somebody else, know how to go from a knee, or a power rack to, a regular push up. Know how to, progress from the squat if you can't do the squat. So execute what you do know. And then know what you don't know. So that way you don't start applying a bunch of shit that you really don't understand and you don't know. That's when people get hurt. That's when people go backwards as far as their progress, because people are trying to fake it before they make it.
Right.
That's great with a lot of different things, business and so forth. It's terrible in training. So you gotta know what you don't know. And then you need to continue to learn. And you need to continue to learn based upon that, know what you don't know. Continuing to learn is a lifelong process that never stops. We just had a sport performance summit that we put on and had 300 attendants. And I have Buddy Morris and Joe Ken, who have both been in the industry. Buddy was the second strength coach ever hired. And his key takeaway is you never stop learning. He reads every single day.
Yeah.
And out of Buddy Morris and Joe Ken and these people that have been in the industry for 30 years, prime leaders, 30, 40 years, they're all sitting taking notes off what the other presenters were doing. So that speaks volumes that you have to continue to educate yourself. The very last thing is know how to validate your source. And that's become more of an issue in the recent years of the internet gurus and all the other kind of stuff. You need to know how to really validate where your information's coming from.
Yeah.
What do they know? Where did they go to school? Who did they mentor under? Who have they trained? What have they done themselves? You really need to dig through the bullshit and find out if they really do know and if they really are somebody that you should listen to, because a lot of times they're not. And it's not a mystery, and it's not this big complicated maze that you have to go through to determine if somebody's actually credible or not.
Right.
It's pretty easy to figure out. You just need to take the time to do that. So if you do those 4 things, you're always going to progress forward.
Wow. That was awesome. Thank you. Yeah. Thanks for joining us.
Yes,
thank
you.
Yeah. Where do people need to go to find out more about what you have to offer with education?
EliteFTS.com.
That's it. What if they want to follow you on Twitter or Instagram?
Don't. Why? I mean,
I follow you. I enjoy it.
The Instagram is just like a gym pic of the day, so I don't even know how to work Instagram. I just post fucking pictures of the gym. I'm on Twitter. I think it's under the bar. Is my, what do they call it, a handle, a tweet handle with a name.
Yeah.
The Instagram and the Twitter's the same. I'm on Facebook. You can follow me there, I suppose. Then the Elite FTS Facebook homepage. I think I'm on every social media there possibly is. Half of them I don't use.
You're on
but
Pinterest?
Yeah. I mean, the best way.
Dave puts his cookie recipes on Pinterest. Look them up.
Yeah. I mean, if anybody really wants to follow me, I got a training log on EliteFTS.com, and I try to keep everything aggregated there, so they'll be able to know if I did a podcast, here's the link to the podcast and so forth. So that's the best way.
And you did write a book, Under the Bar.
And it's excellent.
Yeah, I got about 20 books, but that's probably the most.
That's probably the one someone should start with.
Yeah. That's the one. It's based upon values, and that's the one that where I wrote about the values that I learned in the gym and how they've applied throughout life and business. So
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Join the conversation every week after the episode over at barbellshrugged.com. This is also where you'll find new episodes of Barbell Shrugged, Technique Wad, Nuggets and Pearls, Barbell Business, Get Change, plus new articles every day on our daily blog, written by us, guests of the show, and some of the biggest names in strength and conditioning. So, go there and leave a comment now.
Oh my gosh, wow, that's so cool. Yay, that's so awesome.
Did you like this video? If so, subscribe to our channel and share this with your friends.
And if you want even more free, awesome resources to help you reach your fitness goals, plus some updates that we only share over email, head over to barbellshrugged.com and sign up for the newsletter.